Good morning, all. Research is an integral part of a law student and law teacher in order to promote the culture of research and inculcate the skills relating to research. The college keeps making efforts to train the students in that direction. Today, a PG Department of Studies in Law, KLE Law College, Bengaluru has organized this workshop on research methodology and dissertation writing. I extend a warm welcome to the resource person of the day, Dr. Chetan Singai, Associate Professor, Ramaiah Applied Science University. And event coordination is made by Dr. Anita MJ, Vice Principal and Associate Professor, HOD of PG Department. I welcome you, ma'am. I welcome Vishnu Prasad sir, Associate Professor, and all the students to the event. I request Dr. Anita MJ, madam, to introduce the guest.
Good morning, all. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Chetan Singai. Dr. Chetan Singai obtained his doctoral degree from National Institute of Advanced Studies, Indian Institute of Science Campus, Bengaluru, India. His doctoral thesis was on higher education and university governance in India, a case study of public and private university. He completed his MPhil in Law and Governance at the Center for Study of Law and Governance, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Chetan received his Master's in Political Science from Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He received the prestigious Erasmus Mundus Scholarship to pursue a Master's in Lifelong Learning, Policy and Management, a joint degree from University of London, the University of Aarhus, Denmark, and the University of Deusto, Spain. Dr. Chetan has worked as Assistant Professor at National Law School, India University, Bengaluru, and St. Joseph's College, Bengaluru. He has been that visiting faculty, Julius Maximus University of Warburg, Germany, from 2014 to 2017. He is recipient of Social Justice Medal awarded by the Ministry of Law and Justice, Government of India, for his service towards human rights and women empowerment from Honorable Chief Justice of India in 2007. He serves as the Member Academic Council, Karnataka Residential Education Institutions Society, Government of Karnataka. He was nominated as member of the committee to finalize the draft National Education Policy 2020 constituted by Ministry of Education, Government of India during 2019 to 2020. He was associated with the committee to draft National Educational Policy, that is Padma Vibhushan Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan. Under his chairmanship, it was constituted Ministry of Education, Government of India, New Delhi, as Chief Consultant, that is Technical Secretariat at NAC, Bengaluru. He was appointed as Special Officer, Department of Higher Education, Government of Karnataka from 2021 to 2022. As Special Officer, he was instrumental in finalizing the MOU with NASSCOM, Infosys, National Stock Exchange Academy, to offer digital fluency and financial literacy for more than 6 lakh students in Karnataka. He was associated as Member Secretary to the Committee to review the quality mandate relating to the promotion of research, MPhil, and PhD regulation in India, chaired by Padma Bhushan Dr. B. Balram, former Director, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. He was nominated as Member Convener of Governance and Regulation in Higher Education Committee aligned to NEP 2020 by Government of Karnataka. Currently, he is nominated as Chief Consultant, Technical Secretariat, National Curriculum Framework, Ministry of Education, Government of India. He has published 2 books and more than 30 national and international articles in peer-reviewed journals on issues relating to higher education, space policy, and human rights. With this one, I present Dr. Chetan Singai to this August gathering. Thank you, sir. Over to Chetan, sir. Please.
Is it audible? Very good morning to all of you. So, are the seniors, juniors sitting together or in their own comfortable positions? Huh? So, who are the people who are in the later stage of LLM? Seniors, just to get an idea. Okay. Part of the hall. You're all now writing your proposal or about to write a proposal after your methodology course, right? Okay. So, very good morning once again, and thank you to Dr. Mr. Prasad, sir, for introducing me to the college. I've come first time to this campus, and to Sanita for the elaborate introduction. And then again, all the faculty members, sir, for coordinating this. The intent of today's discussion is to make it more of a workshop mode rather than a dialogue of one way. Because often when we hear from the higher education institutions during the drafting of the NEP also, we felt that many a time we don't tend to understand generally. This is not that you should know, but generally as students, what is the purpose of higher education? Let me hear from you first. What is the purpose of higher education? You are all in higher education, whether you're in first year, second year, or whether you will be doing PhD in future, etc. We all have gone through that phase before we come to this part of the life. But what is the purpose of higher education? Whatever degree, don't worry about law or any other degree, just higher education. What do you think is the purpose? One or two? Yes, don't worry about right or wrong. Yes. Purpose. What is the reason behind higher education? It could be as simple as job, fine. Anything else? Anything which is out of the box? Yes. To learn better and contribute to society. Okay. 1. Any other point? Specialized knowledge. Okay. 2. I think we should get 4. Any other? Yeah. Elaborative study of a particular subject or a discipline. Okay. Then last one. To get good salary. Also very pragmatic, very true. Right? So, all 4 of you are right. Let me put it in perspective. The purpose of higher education is to maximize one's capacity and capability. The word maximize is very important because whoever comes to higher education is a person who knows something. Because you have traveled the rough path or the easy path of your school education. So maximization is very, very important. To the fullest capacity. Again, the word fullest is important. It's not just capacity and capability. Maximization for the fullest capacity. Please ask yourself, are these two happening to you? Maximization and full capacity. Or are you having little less capacity being utilized? Then it's a matter of question to yourself. That's first purpose. Second, if you do this too, or what you're doing. 1, to enhance one's knowledge, very true. But what will you do with that knowledge? You have to apply that knowledge to something. For what you will apply? Social, economic, and development of the self. Right? And also many other cultural advancement, etc. See, law is not just about legal component. It is also about social, political, and cultural component. Because the way you apply that knowledge to make a change, to bring that change by maximizing your fullest potential. Everybody has potential, but often we don't maximize it. Often we don't utilize the fullest potential. And then you apply to a particular cause. And that cause could be, again, as you mentioned, in enhancing one's specialized knowledge about the domain. Even otherwise also to elaborate more on a discipline and then engage with society at large. All that is only possible if you are maximizing and if you are having the fullest potential. So that is where, again, I'm going to repeat very often that is it happening. In other words, since we have control examiner here, madam, is examination only the way of measuring maximization of fullest potential? It is one of the parameters. It's one of the parameters. Very important, but one of the parameters. The third important component is the purpose of higher education is to advance knowledge of and in a discipline. Right? Advance, again, the word is advance, not just contribute, but advance. How will you advance your discipline, the law discipline, for example? Have you contributed anything new? New concept, new theory, new method while you are engaging? Because when you are LLM candidate, you are supposed to be very serious sort of an individual contributing to the discipline of law. There's a lot of expectation from you to ensure that you add new theories, new concepts, and new methods, right? In order to advance, not just add and contribute, but advance, right? And that is where we talk about scientific inquiry. So why do scientists get a lot of attention in society? Because they invent something new, they discover something new. Have you discovered anything in your legal education which is new? Any examples? Any thoughts? Anything new have you discovered? In your theories, in your education, any courses that you are studying? Because if you go back to the source document, which was authored by Professor Upendra Bakshi, way back in 1976, which is titled as Towards a Socially Relevant Legal Education. That is a document which is able to make you to study today combinations of subjects. Fire law, an idea emerged from there, which Professor Madhavan further took cognizance of that, evolved that document to the extent that it is now a reality. What is that? Towards a socially relevant legal education. Socially relevant. Is society constant? Very dynamic, right? In fact, hourly society changes, especially in social media, it is per second. You can influence society's thought process. So it means you need to advance knowledge. You cannot depend on the knowledge which is already there. Only. That is important as a foundation. But are you satisfied with that? You're not hungry for more? Bad question in the morning. The word hungry? Yeah. So I think that is the most important purpose of higher education. So of all the purposes, what is important here today for us is how will research help you to achieve this four? In addition to you being sensitive to society, in addition to you being participating in moot court competitions, writing articles, debating, engaging in societal issues like through various social aid camps, etc., how would research contribute? Can you now tell me overwhelmingly whether you think research will add to these four? Does research has a capacity to add to these four things? Or at least any one of these things? Definitely to advance knowledge. You go to a legal aid camp, right? Generally in your undergraduation, you might have done it, right? Or you participate in moot court competition. Have you ever come across a situation that, or what we call in research language, phenomena, where you felt, or a eureka moment, where you felt that, oh, this subject should have been taught like this, or this concept could have been like this, or this particular theory or principles, jurisprudence principles, for example, are not relevant in 21st century. Have you ever come across a situation where you felt to yourself that maybe it should have been like that? Have you felt that? What did you do with that? Did you fight with it, probe it further, and say, yes, let me change this? It is hard, I understand, because undergraduation is overloaded with lot of subjects, you have pressure of completing it, so many things in 5 years. And LLM is a time when you have that freedom. LLM is all about you, not about the program that is like the UG type, where each teacher is working with you on a particular subject. Hence, research becomes the very important foundation for self-probing. Can you imagine if Galileo would not have thought about this planetary thing like he had done earlier? Can you imagine the world like that? Can you imagine the world like without the science being behind it, Newton's law, etc.? It's very difficult. But they did something about it. What is that keyword? Advancing knowledge, but original thought. Not borrowing from somebody only, but it's the original thought. Because today, even after Newton is even his body beneath the soil might have now become fossil, but still you remember him. Because the idea is such. But can we question Newton's gravitation theory now? There's a big yes or no. Yes, it can be. Can be, but we have not probed enough. We have not used our fullest capacity. Because we have accepted it. Because it makes life easy. Because that is something is not purpose of higher education. Making life easy is not purpose of higher education. And definitely not of research. Research which you are now promising yourself to do for this years that you are in LLM is about making life difficult. And that's where the first point is. Here in LLM or in research program, we run behind the problem. In day-to-day life, we run away from the problem. What is that problem? Called as research problem. Because you have been constantly asked, what is your research problem statement? So you run behind the problem. So because you have to make your life challenging, you have to make your life difficult. If you want to make your life easy, you get your license after your 5-year degree, then there's enough problems in society. Then you can go and enjoy with those problems. But here you have, as in legal language, they say you have signed a contract to yourself. So motto, contract to yourself, that I will run behind the problem and make sure I'll find a solution to the problem. And to make it more complex, that solution is not just one, you will find alternatives also. And that's what I have learned in the last 8 years. Because when I work with Dr. Kasuri, because of his stature as what he has worked with 6 prime ministers. There's a 7th prime minister he's going to work with. He's already working with. So he always asks, this is a problem, give me 5 alternatives. Solutions, 5 solutions. A, B, C, D, E. Then we will work out with a lot of consultation, discussion. That's why today, the national education policy, it's very hard to find any problems within the policy because it has already gone through acid test of many options, right? So that is what I am talking about. So first slide here I wanted to share. This light can be turned off because we have glare. So first point is when you have to advance, we have to progress. If we have to progress, we have to inquire. Inquiry is a very challenging word for all of you also because professionally you inquire a lot. So now you have to also inquire as a research scholar. So inquiry means it is based on 2 questions, why and how, right? Why and how. Generally, our education system trains us to ask the how question, right? Let me give an example. Let me ask some of you who wants to volunteer to my question. Anybody wants to volunteer? Before I ask this question, very simple question. Question about this hall. Don't worry about any books or anything. Who wants to volunteer? Whose name starts with B? Yeah. Your name, sir? Huh? Vinay. Vinay. Vinay, right? So if I ask you, how is the temperature in the room? Hot, cold, warm, cold. Please sit. Now whose name starts with P? P is a very common name, no? Nobody there? Yeah. Your name? First one. So I'll ask the question, same question differently. Why is the weather cold here? So now you're giving reason. You're going to start your statement by saying because of the air condition, because of the fan. because generally I'm cool. Right? So if I ask the same question to Vinay, he will just simply say that it is cold. Don't you think the difference now? So my inquiry has changed by simply changing the word how to why, because I am now reasoning for why. So imagine you are asking such a big question for how is global climate change affecting us? You can simply say, yeah, weather is hot, it rains untimely, we might not get fresh water, etc. But if I change it, why is global climate change affecting us? Then again, our questions will change. So that is what is called inquiry. So please ask yourself, both the second year or the senior batch and the batch which is writing, do you have this component in your research? Then it is true inquiry. Number one. Number two, systematic inquiry. So you make this inquiry. What we did was not systematic. It was very informal. But systematic means what? So I'll add one more word, systematic and systemic. Systemic meaning I take the entire ecosystem into consideration before I inquire my own question which I've raised. Systematic means what's the difference between you and a person who also has this question. If you go to a farmer, he will also ask this question. That why is it raining like this? Why we are not getting rain during monsoon time? Of course, it is because of his concern. But for us as a researcher, it has to be systematic, meaning it has to be well defined. It cannot be random. Morning I had X breakfast, so my questions are like this. Afternoon I had something else, so my questions are like this. No, it is very, very systematic. And I'll come to that point how we can make it more systematic. So 2 points, inquiry for progress or advancement of knowledge is what research does. And second is systemic and systematic inquiry, right? Because there is a very famous philosopher who made a very interesting statement. Jacques Derrida, who asked this question to himself. And statement was, I doubt, therefore I exist. I doubt, therefore I exist. This is very profound, right? Very short, but very powerful. Do you doubt that you exist? Do you doubt that the world exists? You have that when you get up in the morning? Am I there or not? Very profound, yes. Very spiritual, but very, very pragmatic also. Unless you doubt about something, then your existence itself is special. If I am saying something today, the why and the how question, you should doubt whether it is right or wrong. Then only you start thinking. Because that's the basic fuel for research. Right? When we do coma, we put ghee. Why? Gods love ghee. It doesn't even reach them. But why do you do that? Huh? Combustion, yes. It's a very scientific answer. Very good. Combustion, right? So, but unless we ask this question, why should we put? Then we will not be able to think. That's what today, 21st century, we say. There's a nice book by Yuval Harari, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. You should read that, definitely. Yuval, Y-U-V-A-L, Harari, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. He very interestingly says, one of the lessons of the 21 lessons for 21st century is shifting from the whole knowledge thing, what we do, is to make us, all individuals, to move towards thinking about how to do versus what to do. Right? How to what. I think we need to now move towards not just about the what part, but the how part. How things happen rather than what things are, which was the same example of climate change. So that's why doubt is often better than overconfidence, which happens if you had a very good undergraduate experience, you'll be overconfident in your masters. Right? And if you had very bad experience undergraduate, you'll still be overconfident because the same experience might continue. But ask yourself that you will not be victim of overconfidence. That is, last 7 days I can finish my dissertation. Is that feeling there? Proposal itself takes 7 months actually. Right? So I'm just trying to scare you for the sake of discussion. Don't worry, it can be done. Right? And inquiry foreign leads to inquiry and inquiry leads to invention. That is what it is. And this part, inductive, deductive, I'll come to that later, don't worry. But keep that in mind. Inductive and deductive. There are two ways of doing research. Now, there are three typology of research that you can do. And it completely depends on you. Again, don't depend on others, right? Like throughout our life, we depend on neighbors' advice, isn't it? At least in school education, neighbors tell which school is better and accordingly we'll send our children, right? So that is what has happened. So don't depend on neighbor, right? You should become like an Onida TV slogan. Do you remember that? Old Onida TV? Neighbors envy, owners pride was what during our school days we used to see that. So now it is not there, right? Now it is the opposite, right? So neighbors, sort of pride is my own pride also today, owner's pride. But anyways, so keep that in mind. It's your research, nobody else. You are the victim and the beneficiary of your research. Don't blame anybody else. Also, don't acknowledge anybody else for success. You are the only person who has to do. So you have to decide what type of research would you like to do, because that also determines on the purpose, right? Are you going to build a new theory or a concept in the law discipline or applied discipline? Are you going to just continue to add what is being studied already? In other words, strengthen it, consolidate it. So all that depends upon these three types: exploratory research, descriptive research, explanatory research, right? Approach that we use in exploratory, we are being unstructured. The question I asked Vinay and Prajwal is very unstructured because I just asked for the sake of my knowledge. But I didn't have any literature review behind it. I did not have my thought for inquiry in my mind, etc. Structured, descriptive, where I have the method and the formula ready to engage with it. And explanatory is highly structured. In simple words, here it is the what part of it. What is what? What are the factors affecting climate change? Here it is how and the why. Here it is highly the why part, because I explain something, because my response should start from because, right? In the explanatory part. Descriptive, it can be simply statements but structured. But here it is more unstructured. It is more like chai pe charcha, which happens very often. And don't fall victim to that also. Because if you keep on talking about your research, then when are you going to write? Because writing is the biggest curse that all of us have, including me, right? Because it's very difficult, because our school system did not emphasize on writing. We always went on route learning, by hearting. Writing is the last thing we often do, right? If I ask you to please summarize what I have presented, then you will start hating me. Very difficult to write, no? Yeah, you write in your notes, no doubt, but when you write for yourself, it is very hard. So I'll refer to a book by William Ginsner on writing well. It has 24 editions. I read that book even now after 10, 20 times. I don't know how many times I've read. It's very, very powerful book. The book itself is a good example of writing. On writing well, which the PDF is available online. With due acknowledgement of copyrights is available. Please don't get into the details right now, but it is available, right? In that one point he says, writing. Why do we struggle writing? Because we always write for others. Because you always get into this anxiety, how the other person will read it, how the other person will feel about it. Will they appreciate me? Will they criticize me? But all the great writers that he also says, never write for others. You write for yourself. That is why we tend to have writer's block, because we can't go after a certain point. The great writers, including autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, it is his story. He has written for himself. It's like a letter written to his father or parents, right? So that's why the book is so simple and so powerful. So that's one footnote for your reference. When you're writing, don't write for others, write for yourself first, then leave the rest to the world. And Almighty, don't worry, everything will be good, right? Then in the, how do we do this approach? How do we go about it? Here we ask question, continue to ask more structured question, and by using hypothesis, structured explanatory, you have hypothesis, which again will come to that eventually. Any questions until now? Any clarification? I can't see there. I have shared the slide. You can see that later. Only these two parts is where I wanted to emphasize with an example from here. So, if you see here, the relevance of any research can be of 5 types. One is it should be either theoretical, where you don't go for data collection. You can engage with more doctrinal kind of a study, but not too much emphasis on case laws, but on theories. Other one is empirical, where you can go to the field or focus more on case laws and other primary sources. Third is applied. You can do the first two, but the purpose is to apply it to solving a problem, right? A social problem in the courts. For example, this whole backlog of cases that are there in the judiciary. Are you having any solution to resolve that problem? So that is something where you're applying your knowledge for solving that problem. Grounded is very similar to empirical. That is, you go and engage with society. All those legal aid camps, if you remember, you are actually grounded there, not just by visit, but by your thought also. And integrative is, you can integrate any 2 of it or 3 of it. That I would not recommend for now. But for you as LLM, I would say the first exposure to research for you, because LLM dissertation is not end of research. Like PhD is also not end of research, which often we tend to do, but it is the beginning of research. Right? That's your first exposure to research. If you can focus on either a theoretical sort of a dissertation or an empirical or applied. Applied is also challenging in the time limitation that you have, but at least the first two, empirical or theoretical. Please don't decide to yourself whether you will do doctrinal or non-doctrinal upfront. It can change, and it needs to change. It will evolve. That evolution itself is your inquiry, right? Then rigor. What should be the research rigor? Is it definitive, where you have a structure, where you are dealing only with concepts and theories? Whether it is predictive, that you are seeing that in the next 10 years, legal education research will be like this, and it could evolve like this, or it is just explanatory, where you are answering a question, or it is descriptive, which is what I mentioned in the previous slide, where you ask the why and the how question and engage with that. But what is more important, the last point here, is that this one, impact. Are you, is your dissertation agenda setting? Is it setting a new agenda in legal education or legal education research? That is something that you have to think through. If it is agenda setting, it has to go through a lot of rigor of being definitive, predictive, explanatory, and descriptive. Or is it agenda extending? That is, a concept is there, which, for example, PIL is a concept. You're extending that concept to another context. It emerged during the Bhopal gas tragedy that we unfortunately witnessed in the country. And you're now applying it to some other context. That is called agenda extending, not agenda setting. That is agenda setting, because that was a context where social interest litigation came, SIL, which eventually also took the form of PIL. That's agenda setting. Are you going to deal with agenda setting or agenda extending, right? For example, now due to urbanization, roads that have been, the Mysore Express Road, for example, has also opened up many issues, right? For farmers, for the dwellings that are around that highway, the restaurants which were there earlier, now being moved out, and now they have to relocate or just close them. So there are many issues. So are you going to do something called agenda setting there, or are you going to apply the concept to agenda extending? And is it agenda following? Following means, again, PIL is there, Bhopal gas tragedy work has happened. Now we are going there and engaging with that particular concept and coming back and doing your dissertation. Or is it agenda neutral, right? You do not have to worry about setting. You do not have to worry about following. You do not have to worry about extending. It is something which is very neutral, out of the box. Or is it agenda correcting, which is what I would urge all of you to do. Agenda correcting. Correcting meaning this concept of PIL is not appropriate to India in 21st century. This is my hypothesis. An example. It has to be something else. That is called agenda correcting. In sociology, there's a very classic concept called Sanskritization. Have you heard about it? right? Sanskritization, our own Karnataka scholar, Dr. M.N. Srinivas, introduced this concept called Sanskritization. If you're not aware, in 2 lines, Sanskritization is nothing but the particular caste, which we call dominant caste, who are not the higher caste as per our Varna system. The dominant caste following the practices, or rather mimicking the practices of the higher caste of a Varna system in a particular village, he calls that as Sanskritization. For example, not eating non-vegetarian, going to temple in the morning, all those things, the traditional system. Now things have changed in 21st century, but hence it needs agenda correcting. He in fact did that study in 70s, came back in the 80s and went back to the same village and did another study where he corrected parts of his concept. But today, if he visits, which he's no more, but if he visits, then he might say a different concept altogether. So that's called agenda correcting. That the Sanskritization concept might not be relevant today, or maybe it has taken a new avatar, which was not the case in the earlier times when he did the studies in 70s, which is obvious. Context changes, life change, concepts also change. That's called agenda correcting. So in your legal discipline, the subject, the constitution and IP that you are going to pursue your dissertation, is there anything that you want to correct, which is not being corrected earlier? As simple as, do you want to correct the gravitation theories? For example, it affects our day-to-day life, isn't it? So do you want to correct that gravitation theory? So that inquiry and doubt has to be also very much related. So don't worry about the other slides. That's the idea that I wanted to take. So can we take a stock of this one? Setting, following, correcting, extending, and neutral. What is that you want to do? In examples. Maybe the batch which has been writing the proposal. What is a proposal like? Is it correcting, following the agenda of somebody? Or is it going to correct the agenda of somebody? Or is it extension of somebody's, which is the most popular thing, right? Somebody has studied in 60s, 70s, 80s. So let us now study it in 2023 and see whether it is applicable or not, especially in the landmark judgments, right? So for example, and maybe some of the scholars who have studied this particular concept. Any thoughts from anybody who's writing proposal? Extension. Can you give an example for others also if you can? How do you think is extension? I really don't know what you're writing about, so that also I want to know. How do you see it as an extension? Whose theory or concept are you extending? Then you want to use the mic? Here. I don't know whether it's on. Yeah. Please think of other examples while you say. What's your name? Monica, yes, please.
Regarding the Folks Act, in that they give only preference to the victims who has been got suffered, and they take the gain of the accused.
So accused has been not rather understudied in research.
Accused has not got more rights.
So that is your study, that how the accused
Got affected. How they get suffered.
Now, taking Monica's example, you all are experts in the domain. Do you think what she is saying is right? Is it extending the agenda, or she's going to set a new agenda, or is it neutral, following, whatever? Is there any literature available in support of the accused? Any papers, any thesis, dissertation that you have come across, which is not supporting, but which talks about the issues that an accused faces in the POCSO Act? Any thoughts? If you can't find, then it means she is doing something new, right? Am I right? Yeah. Any quick thoughts that is there any such article you have come across where there has been some research on this aspect? Definitely you cannot say with this precision, definitely, because she is the only expert right now working on that. So she is doing literature review. So now my question to her, which is subsequent question to all of you. Have you done enough literature review to come to this point that there is not much research on this component in India? That's a question too. Don't worry, don't need to answer, but keep that thought in mind. Any other? So you are saying you are more on the agenda extending. Okay. Yeah, definitely. You can rank them in order. In research, complexity is more welcome. Yeah, you can rank them in order.
Basic research on acid attack. So what I came across was that there is no separate law as such for acid attack. Like I did a comparative study. So in Bangladesh, there is a separate law for acid attacks, whereas in India we don't have that, and even punishment for that, like came into force in around 2015 or something.
Fine. No, the details definitely are useful, but now after doing that, where do you see yourself?
So one is correcting, sir.
Correcting. You're correcting something which is already there.
Laws are not stringent in India.
Okay.
So
Fine.
And one more is setting. So
Is it the current laws are not stringent, or there is no such law?
current laws are not stringent because regarding the sale of acid and all the poisons is there. So it is not that stringent as far as I observe.
Fine.
And setting is wherein a new law needs to be made.
So yeah, your name?
Soundarya.
Soundarya. So is Soundarya's point correct to all of you? Like you feel that, because you remember you're all part of her advancement of knowledge, directly or indirectly. So what she's saying, is it right? That she is setting agenda by providing a new law, and she's also saying that it has to be corrected because the current laws are not appropriate enough or stringent enough to sort of avoid that sort of unfortunate incident, right? So it's more of a barrier for those incidents to happen, while there is a law for addressing once the incident, unfortunate incident happens. Is she right? Are you sure? What if I say there is a law on this? Huh? What about the other IPC sections? Yeah. So you have to justify enough to come to that point, which is very true. I agree. So that's why when you do agenda setting, so agenda correcting is more of a extended cause. Your primary cause is agenda setting. So that means your rigor has to be also equally well planned, such a way that you are able to. So will that lead to a draft law as an outcome? Yeah. So that means you are engaging in that, right? So this is just 2-3 examples. But let's say ask the first years, what is your intent when you are going to write a proposal? What do you plan to do? Don't worry about your topic or idea. What is your intent? What do you want to do? Agenda setting? Want to do agenda correcting? Agenda extending? Yes, name please. Jayant.
Maybe agenda setting cases that I have focused on, because there are a lot of practitioners or pitfalls in the area of IPR.
Yeah.
The law is silent. So solving those is could be one of the agendas, and setting on goals that would lead to the advent of whole new legislation.
So there is a scope for doing that, because you said IT law, right? IPR, yeah. So IPR is definitely again a dynamic component. As and when we are talking here, there are new issues coming up, whether it is the GI tagging or whether it is about many other things, which products, which set of practices tend to be. But agenda setting means your inquiry has to be systemic and systematic. Your inquiry has to, but it's not that it's very tough and you don't do. It's not like that. In fact, the value of your work, if you're doing agenda setting, has more significance as compared to others, right? Yeah, thank you. Any other points from here? Why the left side of the hall is so silent? Ideologically, left parties are more vocal, right? So on the left, because I studied in GNU, so not even a single day was there without protest. Yeah. Why left? Any breakfast? Only one person spoke here, madam, just share her ideas. But what about you? What is your research proposal idea? What do you want to do? Agenda setting, agenda following, agenda correcting, or agenda neutral? It's also good, don't worry. Any thoughts? Yes, your name? Aditya, yes. Little louder, Jayan should hear you. That's the challenge.
My proposal would be around agenda neutral actually.
Okay.
Because as far as my concept goes, it goes with the concept of jurisprudence.
When you say you are now preparing a proposal or you already? Second year, okay, go ahead. Yeah, what is the concept?
My concept would be drawing a relation of jurisprudence and its theories to other aspects of law for better understanding, basically, because
Okay.
not completely understanding.
But while doing, are you going to question the existing discourses, or are you going to say, I'm okay with the existing discourses, but I'm adding to that?
Through my study, if at all I find any equations I made.
There's a possibility. So you might not be just neutral, but you can also correct certain things, right? Yeah. So that is something that you may want to keep in mind. But again, these are not something that you write in your proposal or dissertation in the words. It is the outcome, whether it is neutral, whether it is extending, whether it is correcting. But the intent should be clear, and you should be open. Don't worry about, no, I have decided to be neutral, so I cannot do correcting. But it's fine. That intent has to be very clearly looked. Thanks, Aditya. Yeah. But what is your purpose and rationale behind studying that institution? Yeah.
Discharging the functions being adopted from other countries.
Sure, but in your presentation, if you find that A, B, C are good, but D, E, F are not, whether that's effective or not effective, then you need to then rational out that why D, E, F is not evolving or functioning the way it should be efficiently. So those three, if you provide any solution, it would become agenda correcting, right? And if you say all 6 or 5 elements are performing very well, but there is a problem somewhere else, then you are doing agenda setting, that you are looking the problem outside the scope of your institution that you are studying, because problems could be outside the institution also. So that, and in case there are no such literature available on that, that will become agenda setting, right? And if there is literature available and they have said ABC is efficient, DEF is also efficient, then you are saying DEF is not efficient in my study, so I am correcting that literature. The 6 points that you have shared, for example, for which they are saying efficient or not efficient, either of this. But you are saying that either 3 are efficient, the remaining 3 are not efficient. That shift that you will have, the change that you will have from that literature is agenda correcting. But if you say all 6 are wrong, then you are bringing back with 7, 8, 9, 10 reasons. That becomes agenda setting. And if you are the only one doing that as part of your dissertation, right? So that is agenda setting. Let's go on. So how do you select the research area or topic? Have you come across this statement that movements, you'll tell somebody that you're doing LLM dissertation, they'll ask, no, what is your topic? Isn't it? Because initially first year, this is the first semester rather, you'll be constantly asked this question, what's your topic? And when you come to the final semester, when are you submitting? These are the 2 questions which will bother first semester and the last semester. When are you submitting and what is your topic? How do you arrive at that topic, right? First very important rule, very simple rule, is that a topic is something which interests you. Not your teacher, not your guide, definitely not your neighbor. You're not going to impress your neighbor. You have to impress yourself. Because very nice sounding topics are very easy to arrive at. And taking global issues are much easier because it's very impressive. Studying, we had a friend who was studying arbitration and conciliation in US and in many other European nations. I was to ask him this question, when are you going to go for field work? He said, no money, no funding to go to field work and no time. Then why should we use that topic, right? So that is where something which is feasible, something which is definitely of your interest, and you are the only person who has decided. You are the king and queens of your topic. Nobody should influence you. It's very simple what you are hearing, but it's very challenging. Because if you keep, I'll come to you, because if you keep your next goal, will I be able to get my internship in the top firms if I do this topic? Will a potential judge judge me on my topic, or rather impress myself, impress on me on the topic I choose? These things will be very much bothering you eventually. Something which is simply interest you. Yes. Your name? Yeah. Yes.
As she mentioned that it would be extensive research.
Yeah.
I see
Extending research. Yeah.
I see rather than setting up research, rather than extending.
Agenda setting. Yes. Yeah. She said both are possible. Correcting and extending, right? When you were saying about, sorry, POXO Act, yeah. But I think she said about correcting or rather extending. What was it? Extending, first one, right? So you are saying it is setting also, something new that she is doing. But that's why I asked her this question. Are you confident and all of us are confident that no article or no research on that area? Can we say that with confidence? This word not really is where we are a little doubtful to call it as agenda setting. Unless we do a comprehensive literature review, systemic and systematic literature review, and also present it in many forums, in forums where they discuss on POX and otherwise. For example, there are a lot of centers, and Center for Child Law and Human Rights, etc. There are centers. So if she goes and talks about these things then, and then they say, yes, this is very unique and new, then it is acceptable. Till then, it's very hard to say it's agenda setting, because we might find something as a blind spot to us where some research has already happened.
So I don't mentioned that writing about something shouldn't be dependent on what others will think.
Yes.
It should be dependent on what we think. But then if I think about answer sheet, if I'm writing some answer, it cannot be dependent on myself, like what I am.
Yeah, so that's why we are differentiating between education and research. Education, for your degree, there's a requirement for you to write in a certain way. But for research, there's a different way of engaging with it, right? Research is all yours, right? So what can a guide and advisor do is to work with you, right? In the sense that there is a specific agenda. And as long as you're able to convince, first person to read always is your guide or supervisor. Once you're able to convince that there is a logical flow, your arguments are not very emotional, but structured on a particular concept and theory and a method, I think that itself is a test of its writing. But answer sheets are different, because that's where you are learning from your course material and writing. There also you can develop that style, but there's a purpose for it. But writing for this purpose for research is different. So you have to differentiate them. Dissertation is a different thing altogether, right? So between the answer sheet. But yes, it is very hard to differentiate, but the system that we are in, we have to differentiate generally, right? Yeah. So read that book on writing well, you'll get a perspective. Ask yourself the following questions to help generate topic ideas. Ask yourself now, please do this exercise for yourself and please tell me. First, do you have a strong opinion on a current social or a political controversy related to acid attack, POXO, all those things that IP? Nothing is, legal issues are not independent of social and political context or controversies, either of that. Do you read or see a news story recently that has interested you? Something which came on the headlines, something which you saw flash news on, especially this WhatsApp university, that we are all victims or beneficiaries. Should I call victims or beneficiaries? Contextual. See, Vishnu Prasad sir is very diplomatic. He says contextual. Yes. Yeah. Because if he says yes, that we are victims, then he can't use WhatsApp. And if he says no, then he has to depend only on WhatsApp. Right? So it depends, right? But it is a problem. So did you find something there that was, which something interested you? Do you have a personal issue to deal with the problem that you are studying, or interest that you would like to know more about? Personally, you are engaged. Like, for example, in our own neighborhood, there is a incident of acid attack. and that has led to me to take up this topic. Or unfortunately, if somebody in the family has gone through this unfortunate incident, which makes us to feel take this topic, not a problem. It's also acceptable in research, but I'm just sharing this as an example. Is there an aspect of one of your classes that you have been studying that you would like to learn more about? In during one of the classroom, you felt that this topic or this subject knowledge demands me to probe further, right? Or there's something like that. So here you have 4 checklist, I would say, to you to narrow down, not even decide yet, just narrow down your area of interest or topic. Again, not topic, interest. I'm stressing on this because it's very important, friends. Otherwise, you'll end up in doing something you're not interested. And definitely, dissertation will be deserted, right? Because you'll only keep having deserts because of stress, right? Because you'll start postponing. Tomorrow I'll write, day after I'll write, it'll never come. So that's why interest is very important, right? So do you have a strong opinion on a current social or political controversy? Because our knowledge is not independent of this. Somewhere or the other, it will have that sangama. Narrow your topic to something manageable. Don't have very big aspirations that I will solve all problems of society. You're only solving one or half of the problem of society. So please narrow down as much as possible. And that's only possible if you discuss among yourself. Please don't be to yourself only. Just when you have an idea, have a small group of friends. I wonder sometimes that during moot court competition, how every differences are resolved and everybody comes together till the event is over. After the event is over, again, they will go back to their own pathways because there is something which there's a goal that you will have to reach to. Similarly, have those small groups amongst yourself and don't go by friend circle. Develop people of common interest. In your own groups, there will be common interests. You need to overcome all those things because those are all only temporary. After that, today, if me and Dr. Vishnu Prasad wants to meet, we cannot meet because of our professional, sort of issues. So please develop that habit of discussion. That's one thing I liked about JNU. There's not even a single cup of tea without talking about issues. And today I'm able to connect so many things. We should talk about Israel and Palestine issue over a cup of teas actually. And then we realized that we reached a point of acidity and then we stopped there, right? So that is how learning happened beyond classroom. Classroom is only just for LLM, definitely should not depend on classroom. So narrow your topic to something. Ask this question always. Remember the formula. So what? You want to study POXO Act, so what? Ask this 15 times. You ask your friend to tell this question till you get angry on that friend, right? So that's where you ask. Then you say, I want to study about the emphasis on the issues of accused. So what? So something. Then she will add some more. Monica will add some more points. So what? So what? So what? Till you reach to a point that yes, this is the point you have to study. This is the reason you have to study. It's very easy, no? Here the room is cool. So what? Right? Then you will ask this question. So what? So what? So what? So please put it on your wherever you study in front of you, but don't overdo it at home, right? Because Nimans is not far. So please don't ask everybody. Remember those Paresh Rawal's movie with the question mark on his forehead? Don't do like that. Okay. So only in your friend circle you do it. Okay. So what? Ask this question. So what? Till you reach to that point, as they say, eureka moment, where you feel, yes, this is the reason why I want to study. That is where you narrow down, right? If your topic is too broad, you will find too much information and not be able to focus, which is again the biggest problem, especially when you're writing. And when you Google, and now with ChatGPT, finished. So much of information, right? Please ask ChatGPT about how to narrow down the topic. It will help you actually. Use it for good things also, not just to write, right? Remember, Turnitin has upgraded itself. Turnitin has now accommodated ChatGPT content. It will immediately show the source and also the ChatGPT source. So we'll have to be really working hard with them because Turnitin has now turned into a business because that was the challenge with our teachers, right? What if ChatGPT writes for students? So now they have developed, I'm sure they will sell with a premium price now. If you had shown trust to all of us, then we would not have gone to Turnitin. But that's a problem because there's a temptation to go to ChatGPT. I recently asked ChatGPT how to implement national education policy in India. So within few seconds, I got 7 points. Then I showed Dr. Kasturi Rangan. He said, great, so we should replace all the ministers with ChatGPT. That's the clarity we got, right? So rather all the bureaucrats, not the ministers, but yes. So narrow your topic, don't have too broad a topic, and don't find every information interesting. That's one thing you should understand. We have all become the victims of that in PhD. Some word, if I hear about taking, I forgot your name, Soundarya, taking Soundarya as example, anything and everything around acid attack is not your interest. Because once you narrow down your research topic, only information related to that should be, that is especially to do with what are the possible legal provisions that can be, but don't take everything. The social aspects are there only at the introduction level. So you need to also narrow down, which again, I'll come to that in few minutes, how to narrow down. Background reading will help to choose and limit the scope of your topic, which doesn't happen. Let me tell you upfront. I used to teach that batch in LLM and NLS, where I used to always ask them that before arriving at your topic, how many papers, how many books have you read? But often what they do is go to the library because of pressure. 1 year LLM is a pressure, I understand. Go to the library and see previous year dissertations, right? So it is worse than ChatGPT, right? At least ChatGPT are making effort to ask the question. Asking question is very difficult and getting the answer, right answer. But there they have to go there and see, oh, in 1997, who has done what, in 2001, who has done what, and then is to come. But reading is not that. Reading means going deeper into the subject, right? If I ask again, Jayant, how many books he has read on IPR or IP related before he arrives at his topic, or articles also. Don't worry about reading books. They're boring sometimes because of the courses that you're having, because you'll be too busy. But at least the book reviews, at least the articles. Actually, there's no fixed formula or number, but definitely you should have 5 to 7 articles read, at least one full book read to arrive at your research topic. And the discussion, so what discussion. Ask the question to the author. If he or she has said something, ask the question to, when you're alone only. Ask, don't ask whether everybody. So what? Mentally you ask that question, right? So that is very, very important. Unless you solve this problem, I am not sure if you're able to complete your dissertation. Because this is the first point at which you will arrive at your dissertation topic. Now, to arrive at this, the last point I said, reading. What do you do? Well, literature review is the only source more than anything else to say that this is the area that I want to work on, and then you can give reasons and justification. And also there is a difference between literature review and literature survey. Survey, you know, land survey they do measurements. Remember the engineers, road survey they do, right? Their job is to measure only, but not to give any analysis further, because that's a very decided and determined job. So survey means taking a stock of where it is and what it is. But review means you become critical about the survey. That is why this particular author has written in such a way. Why is this author doesn't, why is that the author does not account for these theories and these concepts, but only sees from a particular perspective. That's a review. So sometimes I feel review chapters, if they're good, they're worth publishing by itself. You don't have to wait for your empirical data or your case law analysis. It can be published as it is, right? So for example, so that's why please take this as an independent thought. So types of review are: for a review paper, are you writing for a paper? Are you writing for introduction and discussion section of your research paper or thesis or dissertation? Or are you embarking on a new area of research, which I was asking, especially Monica, about POCSO Act and the aspects of accused being accounted for in any paper. So if you have found something, then that is, you are embarking on a new research area. And for your research proposal, there's a difference. For a dissertation, doing the review is different. For your proposal, it is different. In proposal, you are like a marketing executive, right? You are selling it to whom? To the domain of legal education and to your supervisor and the committee. You are convincing them that this is a proposal and hence I am doing the review, what is required for selling my idea. But for dissertation, you're going beyond that. You're not only selling the idea, but you're engaging with the idea very deeply, so that becomes your background for your further chapters. So please remember, dissertation proposal review is very, very limited, but the purpose is to sell the idea, convince the other person that this is why I have to do this research, what we call gap. You find the research gap, especially as we discussed. Now let's go deeper into this. How do you conduct the literature review? Again, I want to make this very clear. I'm not talking about survey. At your dissertation level, you should not be doing survey. You should be doing review, right? Determine if proposed research is needed, right? For example, again, IP-related work, if there are already articles written, but still there is some gap which has not been addressed. So that's something that is where you will use literature review to convince in your proposal that I have read. Please show off your reading. Is it much clearer now? Please show off that you have read so much. No problem. That is what is required. In academia, you need to convince the other person that you have read so much, right? That's why I was showing off by using two authors' book, William Ginsner and Yuval Harari. Fair enough. That's fine. That is accepted. That is what is needed. So you need to show yourself to the world that you have read so much, and hence you have come to this topic. No emotions will work. No emotions will work. It's only this. Narrow down a problem. Literature review should help you to narrow down. In addition to the so what question, you need to narrow down. For example, there is an article written on the role of legal aid in India in the last 40 years in making a change towards societal aspect. So there's an article written there. But during that article, they have missed out on a component of the emergence of the Silicon Valley and the IT hub that India has, especially Bangalore. Startups related issues, entrepreneurship related issues have not been captured. Because entrepreneurs face serious legal issues. They really don't know how to deal with certain issues that are upfront there, and they hence depend on most of you as professionals. So if you think legal aid can be extended to them, they are also human beings. They are also societal people who are going to help provide more jobs to young minds and young aspirants. So if you want to consider that, that's a gap. But you see it in front of you. Your neighbor might be doing it, but in research, you still have to prove it through literature. You cannot say that yesterday I was having a conversation with my neighbor and I feel this is a problem. No. Fine. You take that as a problem, keep it in your mind, start searching literature on that, and then convince through theories, concepts, and literature, this is a gap. We also see on the road that many children are not going to school. If I ask, or maids at home, for example, if I ask you, you'll know the problem and also you know the solution, but that cannot become research problem. That has to be brought in through literature, brought in through text. That is the academic exercise. Keep that idea, but you should narrow down based on your reading. And literature review should help you to generate research questions, especially why and how, not simply by meditating. It should be done through literature and hypothesis also, that it should help you. So literature review has a very, very important role. In fact, I would call it as the sanctum sanctorum of research proposal and the dissertation, as they say, right? The main deity that we enter the temple. So pure, so important for us that we all want to reach there and get the darshana. So that is how it is. Heart of your research proposal, heart of your research dissertation that you are going to do. If that is weak, everything else will collapse. As you know, if heart becomes weak, then nothing can function. So that is why please treat that as very important. Don't treat it as just filling the pages. Don't treat it as whatever I get, I'll capture. There's a meaning for that. It's an exercise. It's not done in one day. As they say, Rome was not built in a day. Literature review will take its own time. I'm going a little faster because I want to spend more time on the subsequent section. Further, the purpose of literature review is how else will you define exactly what you're looking at and where its limits are. If you have found something, the review is how else will you look at it? Right? Have you heard this statement? The grass looks greener on the other side. What does it mean? Anybody wants to explain? What does that saying mean? Quote. Anybody? It's something that we use in day-to-day life, right? The grass looks greener on the other side. One person. Sorry? Huh. Yeah, correct. Yes, Jen. There are two such statements. Only the wearer knows where the shoe pinches, and the grass is green on the other side. It's very simple two things, but there are two important things for us. Because literature review will tell us how else I would see things. One good example I can give is in Karnataka Knowledge Commission, they asked us to study the innovations in education. So we came up with the question, asking this question, what is not innovation in education? Because moment we look for innovation, we always look for schools who have done innovative practices. But we miss out what we call the blind spot. Is schools were not doing innovation. To understand innovation, we should know what is not innovation. Am I right? Because our perception is, prejudice is that we look at only innovation. Somebody will say, here is a school which has introduced a smart classroom. Here is a school which has developed what you call parents, teachers, teaching methods, all innovations. But what is not innovation? To understand the impact of innovation, we should know what is not innovation. Same in health sector. To understand the impact of health sector, innovation are good, but also we should know what is not innovation, right? So that is where literature review should give you that 360-degree perspective. It's not just what you are looking, but also what could have been without that. Very important. And hence your articles that you search is very, very important. Then it also presents a survey of preceding literature. So knowledge is not in vacuum. It has to be borrowed from the past, whether you're doing agenda setting, agenda correcting, etc. You have to take it forward. So what has already been done is also something that literature review chapter should share. So Madam, is literature review as a separate chapter or is it part of introduction currently? How is it planned? So you have the autonomy to make it as separate chapter in terms of design. So maybe that's something that you could think of, because each literature review chapter, if done in a systemic and systematic way, is publishable. But that needs some hand-holding, of course, but that's one idea which I was thinking on. Then how else will you select an appropriate methodology and approach? When you're doing literature review, you have to ensure that an article always uses a method, doctrinal, non-doctrinal at a meta level. But within that, they're also using certain methods. One is methodology, other is method, which again I'll come to. That is another reason why you have to do literature review. Now, this is only 2 points I want to make here. Again, why am I stressing on literature review is, as I said, it is the central component of your proposal as well as your dissertation. The third point is very important. That is where you're able to convince your supervisor, committee, legal education as a whole, and the world which is waiting for you to come in for more research is the third point. That is, literature review establishes the gaps or inadequacies in the area of interest that you have selected, in the domain that you are going to engage. How else will you justify your own contribution? Because already there is a lot of contribution. But what is unique about your contribution? Again, method is unique, maybe. Concepts that you're applying is unique, maybe. Theories that you're applying is unique, maybe. Or the context that you're studying must be unique. Or the whole, all 3 or 4 of that put together is unique. That is something that you need to. And the last point is show off, which I said. Demonstrate your rigor. That is very, very important. How do you do search? How many of you use Google for search? Yeah, Google Scholar or Google? Both. Yeah. Is there did you come across with an option called Google Scholar Advanced? Yes. Advanced. Yeah. How effective is that search? So please go to Google Scholar Advanced and then we'll come to the examples. Majority versus key versus all. What do you call majority article or key articles or all? What happens is often Google only, simple Google gives you all the article. Google Scholar will give you majority article. Google Scholar Advanced will give you key articles in the domain. Very simple strategy you can use. Again, I will maybe use somebody else's example who is working on research proposal. One is IP, Jayant is working. What is Dia? What are you working on? You're interested in working on? Interest. It can change, don't worry. Company law. Anything specific in company law? CSR? Pre-incorporation. Okay. Any other? So what? So what you want to do pre-incorporation? Yeah. So what you do research? So what? If you do research, what will be the outcome? Okay. So what you search case laws? Huh? Recent case laws. Why? Why should you know more? Yeah, more. Why? Why are you interested?
I have certain knowledge about this and I'm curious about knowing
Why are you so curious about it?
this because it is.
Why it is just because it is? Huh?
The way it is.
The way it is, why it is the way it is? Why are you interested? To know more. Curiosity. Okay. Fine. So did you get that example of asking narrowing down? Yeah. Still hard to deal with a budding advocate. But yes, you should now define why curiosity, why that interest, and what is the purpose of it. If you define that, then you can say, this is the area I want to work. Since it is in the initial stage, you can change, of course, but I'm just sharing that. That's why I wanted to know why it is what it is, why is the curiosity, and for what, right? Yeah, so afterwards you can come. You one. That's what. So ask this question, why to yourself. Why do you want to know about only that? Because there are many other legal issues, right? Many other aspects. Now comes the key one. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Was that assignment very interesting to you? Okay. Will it take forward your interest in dissertation? So once you decide it is yes, now it is maybe, may not. Yeah. Ask yourself. Yes, that's important. Yeah. So if that was her area of interest, she will be now looking for key articles, not all articles. Because once she narrows down her area of interest and also the problem. Because you only do this once you have a rough idea of problem and to finalize your problem, literature review. Search is also very important because as I say, you get what you ask. Right? Even as I said, ChatGPT, you can't get what you want unless you ask the right question. Right? Because the keywords matter. Because AI and ML that they uses, it only depends on the keyword. Right? If you want to go to east, you can't ask it to guide you west. It has to be in the same direction. So that's why the Google also works on the same AI and ML format. So the keywords matter. Because how do they capture the articles? They capture the articles by every international article or peer-reviewed articles have 5 or 6 keywords, right, below the abstract. So it actually captures those keywords and brings you in front of the screen. And that's why it makes your search very informed search rather than random search. So simple way of doing that is, first is you search across multiple databases and information resources. Google is one, Scopus is another, Hein Online is another, which is also part of the, sometimes under Google Scholar Advanced, you get because abstracts are in public domain. So from the abstracts, you get the article. Then of course, you have LexisNexis and so many other things. So search across multiple domains. You stop at a point when there is repetition. It's very hard to decide that I will stop at 500th article or 200th article. You stop when there is repetition, right? One. Second, it's also not where you have the full title. Don't put the full title. You only put the keywords, differentiating them with a plus sign, right? So if I was, let's say, doing research on what Soundarya was saying, acid attack plus legal provisions plus India plus 2023. right? So what happens is you are distinguishing the keywords and you're narrowing down on articles published on acid attack in India in the year 2023. You can avoid 2023 in the text because on the left-hand side of Google Scholar Advanced, you have by year also. By year also you can tick mark. It will show. So you can avoid that. So you need to now develop that intuitive way of finding out keywords, right? So we could do that exercise later on. Maybe that could be one exercise that we can do after a short break, maybe, or during the short break. That for your own research, if you start Googling, just put Google that full sentence, acid attack in India in 2000 and legal provisions in 2023. Google search, it will come out with millions of articles. Versus Google Scholar Advanced, I'll assure you it will be in hundreds. That exercise will do for your respective area after we complete. Then how, once you download everything, which is very easy. I remember seeing the desktops of LLM students and PhD students. Desktop has itself a wallpaper of articles, right? With all folders, so many folders, right? It will take another one day to understand what is there because you keep on downloading everywhere, right? Because if somebody says, like Monica is passing through a road and she hears Fox, so okay, I will collect that also because everything is interesting, right? So in that sense, what happens is you become very disorganized and that leads you to becoming less curious and less efficient in knowing. So there are software which are available freely. Free softwares are available, which is called as one is Zotero or Mendeley. Many of you might be using Mendeley because Zotero is not that popular, but it's more efficient. Zotero, Zotero.org, Zotero. Of course, NVivo, madam has already worked on NVivo, so she can give you more details. That's more of a data organization, not from literature. But Zotero, what it does is it can straight capture the article from Google Scholar or from any other database as a citation directly with a PDF if available into your desktop. There are two versions, online version and standalone version. Advantage with Zotero is that, as you know, as and when you publish or as and when you are writing, there are different types of citations asked for. One follows Harvard style, one follows Blue Book style, Chicago style, MLS style. You ask people, especially Madam PhD time, she might have been struggling because that itself take half a day time or one day to convert MLA to Harvard, Harvard to Blue Book citation. Here in one click, you can get 18 different styles. Number one. Number two, often you will come across web pages which are sharing a lot of information, blogs and all. And as you know, you should be knowing more than me on this, is that websites are dynamic. Today I have some information. By evening, somebody raise an alarm, I take it out. But you have used it for your dissertation. So here in Zotero, it takes a screenshot with the date and time, and including the seconds and the minutes that you have accessed, and stores it in your desktop or in your folder. And you can always easily use it. It is acceptable in research. So that you are not responsible for any change which happens after your, that's why they ask you to refer to date and time when you use website. But here it is done in one click. But more than anything, it will have organized way of doing your research. Because as I said, dissertation or thesis is not end of research. You will be writing papers, you will be writing a conference paper. So you will need those references in future also, right? So that is why, because definitely in PhD, we spend around 1 to 2 months only on writing bibliography, because our guides were very particular that if you have not referred, you should not be having that in your references. But we used to, I wanted to show off, so we used to add more, but that becomes a problem. But here everything is organized, but it takes time. First time, it might take you 4 hours. Second time, 3, 2, 1, and then everything becomes automated. And this Zotero has a YouTube small videos which will tell you or teach you. And you are the best 21st century minds who can actually do it very quickly, right? So please use that free software. You don't have to pay for it, but it will help you, right? So I am ready to take a break, madam, if you want to. Otherwise, how do you want? Because we can do that small exercise that you mentioned here. So we can because I need another 30 minutes to cover this, but if you want, we can. Okay. Okay. So that exercise can we share, madam, now? Okay. That I can that Google Scholar thing.
Yeah.
10
Okay.
minutes they can do.
Yeah. By
Okay.
the time they.
Okay, so the exercise is simple. You can take your cell phones. They can, yeah. I wanted to be politically correct. That's why I asked. So go to your Google page, web page, Google Scholar Advanced, and you do all the three. One is the keyword search, majority search, and all search. The topic that is of your interest that we discussed. Just I want to know outcomes. That is, one, when you do a simple Google search on that, please don't change the search title. In all the three, Google Scholar Advanced, and Google, all the three use the same terms. Don't change anything. And I just want to see how many numbers of article have been narrowed down. Right? Whatever topic you are. Randomly we'll ask few of them. Definitely now the left side. The last two rows, I'll be requesting your first input, then we'll come to right and then the center. And then we'll see what are your searches. Ideally, from lakhs, it should come to 1,000. From Google, X number of lakhs of article to Google Scholar, thousands, and Google Scholar Advanced to hundreds, ideally. So make sure you use 4 keywords or 3 to 4, 3 minimum, 4 maximum for your area of interest, differentiated by plus sign. In Google, you don't put the plus sign, but in Scholar and Advanced, you put the plus sign, or you can use also plus sign in Google, but try to make your keyword very effective. Don't use prepositions as keyword of the and, only the keywords. Like I said about Soundarya's example of acid attack, legal provisions, India. Here in Google, you can put because there's no option. But in Scholar and Advanced, there is an option. You can choose the year, right? But for now, don't put the year in all the three. Let's see the difference. So first should be all, second should be majority, third one, that is Advanced, should be key. So if that difference is visible, then that's one good learning outcome if you can look into. Okay, so 10 minutes we can, because I also want to cover the last part and leave. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. Ready? So they have shifted from there to here, isn't it? Huh? But then where did they go? Last 2 rows. They went in search of articles. Field work started already. Good. I didn't know that I was so motivated. Okay, ready? Would like to share? Just share the keywords and the three different search engines, what you got?
Firstly, I searched teen pregnancy,
Teen pregnancy, okay.
Australia, and for sex education, then teen pregnancy. Okay, got 1.5.
So, 1 second. To write. Maybe somebody can write while she's sharing so that we can use it in a sheet. Yeah. So first was google.com, right? What did you put in the search tab?
Sex education, how it impacts teen
Okay. So it's a full sentence, basically. Okay. So you had, sorry, I'll keep on stopping you because of one, you had a key term, then you had an issue, right? And then you had the context in there, right? 3 parts you can do it. Okay, then how many articles you get?
like around
150 articles in Google. Okay. Then next, Google Scholar,
education plus
how many articles you get?
around
50. So 100 articles reduced. Then Google Scholar Advanced, only 3. Oh, it's a very niche area. So from 150 to 100 to 3. Okay. Anybody else here who has not spoken till now? Or you have any spokesperson on behalf of somebody? Anybody from here?
Students.
But meanwhile, while they get walked up, anybody else would like to step from here? Did you try? What about you next to, what's your name? Gitanjali. Next to Gitanjali, who's name? Akila, yes. Okay. You use the same thing, articles on mandatory rate. No plus sign in between? Okay. How many articles we get? 550? 15? 50, okay.
and advanced it will not show so much of
50 only. Okay. So that means that's a critical core of the paper. Yes, anybody else now here? Next to Soundarya, right side. Yeah. Did you find anything interesting? Your name, please. Pallavi, yes, sir. Tell me. Hate speech. Only that you put in Google or?
Yeah.
Okay. That meant millions. Yeah. How many you got in Google? Number 6 digit, 7 digit. Maybe then meanwhile next to you we can fit. Yeah. Your name please. Please you can come back with the number. Name? Kavya, yes. What was your search term? Okay. Next, Google Scholar. Please prepare yourself now while we are waiting for Kavya to finish. Okay. Number. Just below the tab. The key sentence will be there. Okay. Fine. So we'll come back to you while you're ready. Pallavi is good. Okay. Who's going to share yourself? Name? Ikra. Okay. Please go ahead.
My topic is Muslim laws on polygamy in India. So, sir, I couldn't find the numbers very well.
It's okay.
Like, I guess in Google Scholar it is up to 50.
Okay.
And for normal Google it was up to 150 or 160.
So the normal became abnormal. So many.
So basically, I wanted to find the laws and the articles which are written. So advanced wrote less than 30.
Okay. So one is the reduction in the number of articles. That is very evident. But what is more important is how do you look for the keywords and how do you differentiate the keywords? Because this AI ML, which they use for identifying articles, it becomes, see, as and when you are confusing the search engine, it will also confuse you. Very simple. So if you are clear, then the search engine also responds in a much more clearer way on what is available in the public domain. So that is where you now have to, and this is not one-time exercise. You have to keep on doing it multiple times till the point you are getting a constant number. On Monday morning, you might get 50. Tuesday, you might get 70. But there is some constant number that you get based on the keywords. Don't keep using the same keyword. There'll be often many keywords, right? So for example, the example that she shared about hate speech. So if she adds hate speech by urban youth in India, so narrowing down. Hate speech by rural youth in India, narrowing down. Hate speech in JNU, we'll get a lot, right? So because we all did that once upon a time as a student, protesting. So because we don't know the definition of hate speech as on date clearly laid out, right? So it is very subjective. But how do you put the keyword is very, very important. The plus sign only differentiates. But if you want to make further narrowing, you put parenthesis between the words. So if you put a double quote for hate speech plus India without a double quote, then again you're narrowing down. So this is a very useful sort of method to arrive at what you call informed search or structured search. So this is very much available. It's called Boolean search strategy, BOOLEAN, Boolean search strategy. Again, YouTube has a very short video on that. Let me not belabor it now in this session. But Boolean, BOOLEAN. Most international journals, other peer-reviewed journals accept this method. So it will tell you where to put single quotes, where to put double quotes, where to add plus sign, where to put parenthesis. It's a 15 minutes exercise, right? If you are traveling in a bus, you can put on usually you listen to music, am I right? Or go to the WhatsApp University for knowledge and gossip. So please do this, replace that with this. It's a matter of 15 minutes, 2-3 times you see, you'll get an idea, right? I'll not do the literature review part now. Formulation of research question, which is very, very important. And as I said, you cannot have a research problem identified without doing the extensive, systematic and systemic literature review. Not survey, review. Very, very important precondition. There is no other formula, right? You will not get special blessings to have research problem without doing that. It is a precondition, prerequisite. So that is very important. So how do you begin to narrow down your topic? By asking the open-ended question, the why and how question to whatever topic you have arrived at, whether it is sex education, about hate speech, why and how of hate speech, why and how of, what was your topic that you said? Judiciary as a theological authority. So whether it is that, right? But why and how of that, right? Why and how of that. And in your hypothesis, you are also predicting the relationship between different variables. There's an independent variable and there's a dependent variable. So let me ask you this question. You all know now, right? Every day you see on the street when you're walking home that there is poverty and there is illiteracy also. There are people who are not literate also. So what is the cause of what? Is illiteracy cause of poverty or is poverty cause of illiteracy? Is poverty cause for literacy or is illiteracy cause for poverty? Chicken and egg situation, which came first? Very difficult, right? Yeah, but it's a problem to be addressed. How do you see? Both are possible. Your lens that you see could be that because somebody is not literate or educated, they are not getting job. Hence, they are maybe not well off in economy or financially. But also we know that we are people with very well educated but not getting job. That is also possible. So here comes the issue of which is dependent on what. Is poverty dependent on literacy, or is literacy dependent on one's economic well-being? Right? Then there are many questions. Then I will ask you, there are free schools, but again, somebody will say, or some literature will come that though government is providing free schools or school with what you call free education, they don't have time because they have to work. So we need to have evening schools or colleges. That also has been provided. But then the other issue will come, they're very far from their wherever they're located. So there are many aspects of that. So before you decide what is independent and dependent, you need to get the holistic picture. And that is not just by perception, but by reading about certain articles and publications that are there. So that is where the first step comes, which is dependent on what, and hence what will be your independent. Those variables which are not dependent on a particular other variable are called independent. Those variables are dependent on this variable will be called dependent variable, right? How do you formulate research question? Part 2. Be sure to read on the topic to familiarize yourself, whether it is about theology and judicial authority, whether it is about marital laws, whether it is sex education, whether it is on the issues associated with hate speech, whatever that we discussed. Familiarize yourself with the topic. Don't depend on perception only. Second, every topic has 2 elements wherein you decide on the relationship between each other. Any hypothesis variable will, as I said, independent, independent. Remember that within the word hypothesis is the word thesis. Thesis. Any guesses what does thesis mean? Possibly theory. Anything else comes to your mind? Thesis. In PhD, we call it as thesis. Premise, right? Also, it means argument. A thesis is a conceptual based argument that you make about certain things. So premise, argument, theory, all are possible combinations of what constitutes as thesis. So you are now engaging with a thesis. Based on what? Based on your understanding. And we always have to believe that my understanding is not the final understanding. Or is it not? And it is not always the correct understanding. That's why it is called hypothesis. This is also possible. That is also possible. That is, the relationship is both are possible. That's why we have null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. But the unfortunate thing in research methods that we often teach is that there's a tendency to always prove your null hypothesis. It is not the case so. You can always prove your alternate hypothesis also. It all depends upon the data that you get. It all depends upon the content that is available to you, and you have to be neutral about and objective about what you get. So your hypothesis is what you propose to prove by your research, but sometimes you need to have alternative hypothesis to also prove that, because this is a societal context, is very dynamic. At the same time, it is very dependent on the variables. So you might want to prove that poverty is a cause for illiteracy, but you may find that it may not be the case also. But there are tendencies that you find data only to prove that, and you become blind to other part of the data. Remember, we discussed the blind spot. So hence, be foolproof in your approach. Try to get maximum data which is possible. And if you go to various theses abroad who are following the structured approach because of the nature of methodology that they have followed, we're not saying that's the best methodology, but we are anyways borrowing from them. So there, both are possible, proving and also not proving. But the tendency or the method that you arrive is always driving towards proving something. But please be objective, right? If it doesn't get proof, don't worry. You can always revisit the field, change the method to the extent that you might have missed something. Or even then, if it is not to be proved, then your hypothesis must have to be revisited. Then your hypothesis must involve an issue or a question that cannot be answered exclusively by the discipline of law. That's why the tendency towards more non-doctrinal approach is very critical. The discipline of law will answer, but there are other aspects associated with law, because law, as we discussed, is not to be treated in vacuum. It is highly contextual and highly applied. So that's something that you may also want to have a look at it. So how do you understand data? Once you have your hypothesis, once you have your research question, the why and the how, and once you arrive at your statement of problem based on literature review, you will now have to prove it. To prove, you need data, right? And what data means? How do we understand data? There is something called as different types of information that are obtained through observation, surveys, inquiries, or are generated as a result of human activity for the purpose of research. Now, often what we do is, in a non-doctrinal research particularly, doctrinal, of course, where you engage with case laws and so on and so forth, but there are issues like, imagine your legal aid camp. Can you sit in a library and understand legal aid? No, it's not possible. Can you address social problems sitting in the library? You will only be able to understand the context, but you have to probe it. And that systematic inquiry, scientific inquiry needs you to go on the field. And don't worry that all of you should do non-doctrinal, doctrinal is secondary. It's not that is the intent here. The intent is your problem should decide what should be your approach. But before deciding the problem, if you start taking into account your problem, I'll not be able to travel, or what will happen, hygiene is a problem outside, I'll not get good food. If I choose this problem, then it becomes a big problem for all of us. Please don't keep your problems for your research problem. Research problem is independent of your problems. Once you choose, that is, remember, how do you arrive at your research interest? Remember earlier slide, something that interests you, something where you come to a point of the so what question, which will come to an end and say, here is my interest. This is what I want to do and the purpose for that. Once you arrive at it, then you don't negotiate saying, oh, this problem, like I'll repeat Soundarya's problem, acid attack issue that you wanted to study. If she has arrived at this problem, now she cannot say that, oh, I cannot go to the field, right? And hence I am not able to do this study, right? So that is not acceptable. So problem is problem. You have arrived at it based on your literature review, based on your self-probing of asking so what, and also the agenda. That is, you want to do agenda setting, agenda following, agenda correcting, whatever you have decided. Based on that, you arrive at a problem. So once you arrive at a problem, yes, ma'am.
Hypothesis. Like, if I frame my hypothesis and on that basis, I start collecting data. And after that, after my collection of data, whatever I'm collecting, it is against my hypothesis, or I believe that afterwards hypothesis is going to be a null hypothesis.
Correct.
Then again, I have to revisit the whole exercise. So can you tell us some points wherein we can, there is no rule for a perfect hypothesis.
Correct.
There is no rule for
Yes.
But what are those some factors on which we can say that, okay, we will be able to collect data, or we will be able to match our hypothesis, our expectations? So can you emphasize?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, madam, I think two things are very important. Why this problem comes, let us tackle that. If it happens, why it happens? There are two possibilities. One is a possibility that there was no foolproof homework done to arrive at that hypothesis. That is the problem which we have created for ourselves. Second is the field is such that it is opening up to data which is not aligning to our hypothesis. Second is not usually the case. The first is the most popular issue, that we are not able to arrive at our hypothesis based on efficient and effective reading of literature, plus the understanding of the context of what we want to study. I think that is something we have to resolve. And if that happens, then comes the data collection. And then, sorry, yes.
Why we should use which proves our hypothesis? We should go on reading it.
Correct. That's what, yeah.
Then we have to take a part of our hypothesis.
Absolutely.
So obviously, there will be some negative part of our hypothesis.
Yeah.
I can come to conclusion that my hypothesis is true.
Correct.
So why should I?
Yes, sir. That is the second part. You're right. I was still at the first part. What you said is absolutely right. I was telling to madam, first part was that have we done enough background research of what we want to do? That is the first step. That is where 50% of the problem is solved. If you've done that systematically, effectively, we know our context very well, and hence we are making the hypothesis accordingly. Then comes what you rightly said, sir. Second part. We go with that, our limited.
I am prejudiced.
No, sir. A literature review, what I'm saying is you have to
take only those literature which supports my hypothesis.
No. Before hypothesis, we have to do literature review for problem statement. That literature I was talking about. But if you're doing doctoral research, only dependent on case laws and literature review, the tendency is higher that we have become very biased to prove what we want to prove. That is what I was cautioning everybody. But if you're doing non-doctrinal particularly, it becomes, that is easier to come back because it's more of in-house research. But once you do a field-based study, then you can't do course correction. It's too hard, especially in a packed LLM program, unlike the PhD program where there's some scope. So hence, the problem should be solved in the first stage itself. The problem statement should be such that it has to be done through a pilot, where you do a short pilot study, which is non-doctrinal. Yeah, so I was just telling principal sir and madam, my journey of non-doctrinal and NLS was very unique because I had a student from Lucknow who belonged to a very, what you call, urban Lucknow area. And I asked her to do a pilot study before she went to dissertation, especially to convince about non-doctrinal research. So this was a period of UCC in its initial stage. And I said, why don't you go and talk to few women in urban area and few women in rural Lucknow, which is her grandmother's place where she wanted to go during vacation, and then come back and we'll discuss. So what happened there? She went with the hypothesis that urban Muslim women would prefer having UCC vis-a-vis the traditional law, whereas rural would think otherwise. But her finding was different, that rural Muslim women were constantly arguing for the need for UCC, whereas urban Muslim women, isn't it surprising to most of us, because we have a perception that urban people are more progressive and all. But the finding was very interesting and very convincing also, because her argument was in her pilot study, her argument was that, which she disproved her hypothesis, which was what she went with, that urban Muslim women have agency to navigate traditional laws. They can navigate, they can question, they can navigate, they can isolate from those pressures. But the rural Muslim women did not have the agency. In sociology, when we say agency, they could not navigate. So isn't it convincing enough for us to think through? And that is agenda setting, an example. So if she had not done the pilot, she would have gone to that problem, as you say. She would have gone to the field and proved the hypothesis otherwise. But the pilot helped her, because of non-doctrinal research particularly, it helped her to overcome that crisis. So to respond to your question, 50% of the problem to be solved when we arrive at hypothesis, we have to do maximum homework to arrive at the hypothesis. Then second part is course correction, which you should avoid as much as possible. But for that, piloting is very important. Where for doctoral research, I would say present your work to maximum people. That's a pilot for you. If you're doing doctrinal, have presentation to the maximum. Go to conferences, go to workshop, go to research method, training program, present your work so that you get it validated by experts, by people who are working in the domain. That itself is a pilot for you. Don't be into your own shelf that, okay, I am doing is what is right. So that is where I was coming from. So that is how I would see, madam. In two ways we can address it. But still, the advisory is not to do course correction, but do maximum in the beginning itself. Right? Don't wait for pilot should be done because you don't have much time in LLM. PhD, you have that space. All right, that's what.
So, PhD, we are almost through on basis of the hypothesis we have said, and we are almost through. And then suddenly we think that, okay, now this is going to be the subject, or it will be an hypothesis. Then revisiting the entire process is taxing emotionally, mentally.
Yes. But where did you find the problem then? When you assessed your journey, was it the method as a problem? Was it the research problem as a problem? Or was it your engagement with the field, that is data collection, was a problem? That is where you need to now change that, because there is no other option to change the hypothesis. Because maybe your field might not give you enough material. I'll give one example, maybe it will help you to motivate. This is a student of George Mason University who went to do research on a particular tribal community in Africa, where legal anthropology study. And he did 6 years of research. In the final defense, they asked the candidate that how did you approach the field? What was the first thing you did when you landed on the field? Basically, a sociologist asked him. Then he said, I distributed chocolates to the children and wanted to get acquainted with them. They said, your thesis stands rejected because you have influenced the community by giving something foreign to them. Because he was studying a tribal community who are not even exposed to what does this chocolate mean. So you have influence, undue influence on the population. This is 6.5, 7 years of research. So he had to go back to the field. Is it motivating? Okay. Okay. So this is George Mason University. If you search for George Mason University legal anthropology, Jason or Jeffrey, I don't remember. That's a very interesting issue. But that talks about ethics in research. Ethics. So he was rejected on basis of ethics thing. So data are of two types, primary and secondary. This is a very interesting thing in law, which I always want to emphasize, that some scholarly work says case laws are secondary, and many scholarly work says case laws are primary. This is a classic debate. If somebody wants to do research on this, worth researching. You will be agenda setting or agenda correcting if you're able to prove, because in social sciences, for example, census, right? It is argued that it is primary. But within that also there's a debate that census is not primary, it is secondary. Because I am not collecting as a researcher. Simple. Primary means as a researcher I am collecting, is what is the general research methodology training. But in law, it is interesting that case laws, which is judge-made laws, are considered as primary. But my guide used to always say it is secondary, who is, as I said, a very weird man. Do you know who is my guide? Huh? Upendra Bakshi. Weird person. Good friend also, later on. So he used to always say it is secondary, but we used to have debates because he comes from a applied law background. And today, it is still a debate. It is not a resolved debate. And please do some Google search on this. Is our case laws primary or our case laws secondary? It's a worth. I am really looking forward. I really don't have time to do that research. I would want you young people to do some research on this and tell. It will be very great. It will be very great contribution to legal education research. Method of data collection, as I said, these are traditionally the approach. But again, this debate will be very important. And I would definitely go by your research methods course. If it is primary for you, please keep it as primary, case laws. If it is secondary, keep it as secondary. But that doesn't affect most of it in the way you do it, right? That is your internal issue, in-house issue, and it changes, right? Yeah, secondary sources are of these kinds for social sciences, but in law also this stands true, but except the case law, right? And what I want to emphasize here, one point of the many points, is observation. See, this is very important, that when you are doing non-doctoral research, particularly, observation is also data, right? If you're going to the field, how you see people moving around, how, like in the POXO's case and in acid attack case, for example, how the victims behave, how reluctant they are to talk, how open they are to talk, how rebellious they are, how passive they are. These are all data points. In fact, in social science, they used to tell us, no data is data. If I go to interview somebody, if they don't give data, the whole journey of my travel from my institution to the person or the place where I have to go to take interview, the conversation that I'll have with intermediaries, peons, or all those things, is all data. They're all data for me, because that can be considered. The rejection of not getting the interview is also data, right? It's not just the interview, because it's all about observation. There are two types of observation: participant observation and non-participant observation. Participant observation means you are part of the system, right? Wherein you are part of the experience, right? In case of acid attack, as I said, if you are associated with that attack, then you are a participant observation. But if you are not, you are a non-participant observation. You are an indirect observer, because you're not experiencing that feeling, which is, that's one sort of experience. There's a book by Gopal Guru and Sundar Sarukai titled as Cracked Mirror. It's a book which was 2-3 years ago. Again, I'm showing off. You get the point now in academics? So that book is a very interesting book, where the argument is simple. Do you have to be a Dalit to write about Dalit or theorize about Dalit? Cannot somebody who is not part of that community write about it? The book is all about that, right? And Gopal Guru is my teacher. in my master's. And Sundar Sarukai was my PhD coordinator in IISc when I was doing. So both I know very well. And the way they've written is amazing. It's a dialogue. And he uses the example of anybody from Malleshwaram? Knows Malleshwaram? Yeah, you know Halli Mane? Again, bad example before lunch. So Halli Mane, they use the example of Halli Mane, that we can create the experience of a village home for eating. So why not we one person who is not having lived experience of being a Dalit write about Dalit? That's again participant and non-participant observation example. Please read that book when you get time. Very interesting. But that's a good method to example to take into account. How do you map data or evidence? So now, please don't take the evidence as you lawyers take it, right? It's data. Of course, it is also evidence on the ground when you actually get into profession. But for your dissertation, it's called data or evidence of a type which is relevant to you. So now evidence can be of two types. One, observation or textual data, or numbers, qualitative or quantitative. So often I would do is do the combination of both, right? Because there's a strength in quantitative data and there's a strength in qualitative also. But it needs systematic effort because time is less for all of you, right? So we did a study in Bengaluru called Civic Citizenship Index, right? This was with Brown University, where we interviewed 6,000 people in Bangalore in 99 wards of 198 wards randomly in south, east, west, north, the geographical representation. The hypothesis was very simple. And it's a good example of hypothesis, good that I remembered. Higher the civic literacy, this is the right time also, election time. Higher the civic literacy, higher the civic engagement, better the quality of life, right? Arrow mark, upward arrow mark CL, civic literacy, plus upper arrow mark CE, civic engagement, is equal to better quality of life. Example, if I know who is my corporator, if I know who is my MLA, if I know where to solve my electricity problem. Sometimes we call BBMP for electricity. They will scold us and say, why are you calling here? And we call for gutter related problems, drainage problem, we call BESCOM. Is it possible? No. So we should know whom to call. Because if I ask you now, do you know who is the corporator of your ward? Everybody knows? Two corporators. No corporator. Good. So you are the corporator. Self-declared. Okay. So do you have their numbers, phone numbers? Okay. Then do you know whom to call when you have to solve a problem? When the accident happens, whom to call? What number? 108, or will you call 100? Confusion. Whom to call first, right? Or will you say, anyways, police comes last? Okay. My father is a retired police officer. I can be very open to tell about it. So here is the case. So what we did, we went to these wards, had a questionnaire, quantitative, tick mark, do you know your corporate, etc. Even interesting data. Yes, hypothesis was proved. But I'm taking that example. It was proved. Yes, if you have higher civic literacy, you have better civic engagement. Engagement meaning you will engage, ask questions, get your problem solved. So your quality of life is better. But when we saw that, the first question came was, is that so simple? Is that so straightforward? No. Because then we said, okay, let us do random. We have the questionnaire, we had the details, random visits to these places and individuals, wherever the score was very high and low, 2 samples, went and spoke to them, asked, how often do you meet your MLA? He said, yes, we meet very often. What are the occasions you meet? He said, festivals, campaign, when we have celebrations, we meet, we visit the house, but in hundreds they go together. That's not civic engagement. That's just going in a group, right? So then he said, did you discuss, I asked, did you discuss about your ward problems or constituency problems? They said, no, we don't discuss. The same number where we got that, yes, yes, yes. So there was a gap to what quantitative number said, to what the conversation led to. So there we had to again redo the work and say, let us add the qualitative and then quantitative and then come with our analysis. But it was a very weak analysis there because the quantitative number did not match with qualitative. But qualitative was not in the design earlier. We added it based on how simplistic can it get. It cannot be, right? So there data was speaking something else, one data, other data was speaking something else, right? So you have to take a call on that. but depends on the type of research you do. I will skip this and I'll keep this in end. Thank you. And I would urge you to maybe use this example of mine, last point. In my PhD, what I did was I wanted to do primary and secondary data. My idea was to study how many of the education policies, central policies, affect the micro level practices in universities of two types, public and private. And first question to me was, will I get all the information? Who are the people? I'll give two examples of blind spot, where you miss out on those people. And you may have the aha moment, maybe saying that, oh yes, we didn't realize that, which I had. So one was, who are the actors in university or a college? Tell me, who are the actors who matter for college? Students, teachers, then staff. Okay, that's it. Three major people, right? Then we are missing the alumni. Blind spot. They matter a lot. In many institutions, alumni plays a very important role because they are your future recruiters. They are your future seniors who would be having you. That's also. Then parents. They are indirect actors who plays a role. And the community, your surrounding, right? So tomorrow, if the community says we don't want this college because it's disturbing our life, what do you think will happen? Possible, no? Because of too much of noise you make. If they say there is a 90-plus-year-old lady or a man who's unable to sleep, so they'll file a case. What will happen? Public nuisance, right? So community plays a very important role, supporting the institution as well as affecting the institution. And government representatives also play a role because they have the statutes, acts, etc. being laid out, etc. So that those three actually are already a blind spot. So when you see the ecosystem, they matter for any data that you need to engage. So I did an in-depth interview with them. I'll give one interesting example. I went to the registrar of public university, sorry, VC. I said, I want to have permission from you to conduct my interviews. He said, please go ahead. And the first person I thought of going to was librarian, because he or she is always sidelined in any institution, but they are very important, librarian. And I went to that person. I said, Vice Chancellor has given permission to interview. Can I interview? The first statement he said was, these are all observation and my data. First statement he made was, who is he to give permission to me? I am under the registrar's office. If you have not, because you said you have got permission VC, now I urge you to go to register and get permission. But if you had just come and said, I want to interview, I would have given interview. Why did you use the word Vice Chancellor's reference? And he further added, is he some high court judge or something? Is there? Then because my reaction was, I thought it was a protocol. Who is he? Is a judge or something to have protocol? So this is a nuance, but very important data for me, because my thesis title is University Governance. So governance is highly affected by perception and the relationship between the authorities. Why did he say that? Because he has a perception that all vice chancellors are corrupt. Because he has a perception that vice chancellor is not from his community. Because he has a see, he is going by the rule book now. But if the vice chancellor was good to him, he would have ignored the rule book. And he said, oh, you have come from VCL, let me offer you tea or coffee. Right? Maybe. So, but there are these dynamics. So I have to first probe it to the extent that I don't. Then how will I do damage control? Then I said, fine, I'm really sorry, but I'll go to the registrar and get the permission. But I've come from Bangalore, already so many kilometers. If you can allow me to give interview, it will be better. Then he said, okay, but keep the letter inside. Then he gave the interview. Then he insisted, please take my name and the statement I have made in your thesis. He insisted on me, right? Because he had something to communicate through my thesis maybe, right? So, but I have to respect that, right? Because I have to take all those things. So that's how it is. That is a in-depth interview. While doing interview, I was also observing how angry he was when I used the word, how much blood pressure was increasing when I used VC, how much blood pressure was reducing when I used somebody else. So that is all observation I'm doing. So that is the observing the culture on campus also, how students are sitting together. And I found very interestingly that in public university, they display the scholarship for students who get belonging to Rajiv Gandhi, so what is that? Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, Rajiv Gandhi scholarship, something they display on the notice board. They are doing as a culture because it exposes transparency, because the government institution. But the impact it has on students who don't want to declare who they are is very high. So they feel very awkward to have it on the notice board that I belong to this community, and hence people will narrow down me. It has and there was one Iranian student who was sitting cross-legged in the class, and the entire 1 hour lecture, sociology lecture, was on why she should not be sitting cross-legged. An incident which happened on campus, culture, and in sociology class, can you imagine, right? So these are what you call data. But how you will bring now, link to literature review, link to your hypothesis or research question, and then have a discussion with that 3 components, the 3 points of triangle. Literature review you have already done, hypothesis or question that you have, and the data that you have. All 3 are mutually inclusive. They are not exclusive. They should not tell you 3 different stories. They have to be tied in very well. And that is a process. And it is not, again, there is no magic formula that this is how it is. It is an ongoing process. And then there are secondary data which I looked into. But the point is, you have to bring all the 3 together. Constantly have your hypothesis and problem as your lens to look at what you're observing, right? And then you can come back and knit your story, literally. That is what is called analysis of the data. And in analysis, you don't bring new information. You only deal with the information that you have in the previous sections. And analysis is solely yours. It only takes into account how are you addressing the problem, which is the why question. Analysis is nothing about how, only the why. Literature, why and how. Data, why and how. But analysis is only why. Why are you doing what you have got the information? Anything beyond that will make your research problematic, right? So keep this small things in mind. This is not one day's discussion or effort. It is an ongoing process. You need to engage with your guides and supervisors regularly, but don't hesitate to ask simple questions. That's very, very important in research, right? So with this, I'll stop. If you have any questions, I'll take. Otherwise, I have the references also for you. Please develop this culture of showing what you are referred to. Ethically, it's very important. And if you observe, I was citing here, if you see citations, very, very important. Simple thing is, like you want others to appreciate and acknowledge your work, you should also appreciate and acknowledge others' work. Forget about ethics and all, that is important. But humanities, we appreciate their work. Any questions, clarifications? But I'm very happy that it was very participative. Sometimes I have to provoke. That's why sometimes we feel democracy doesn't work. You have to ask, right? Yeah. So any other questions, any thoughts? Will you be able to narrow down on your topic in next 2 days? Narrow. Narrow means narrow. Think of such narrow tunnel that you can't pass through it yourself. You can't physically pass through it. That should be the narrowest point, right? The more broader you get, it will be problematic because you will have others to also come into the tunnel. It will be problematic, right? So, any other questions? I'll be happy to take. Else. Okay. I doubt, therefore I exist is a feeling. Huh? Are you in doubt? Yes or no? Yes, you should be yes or no. Are you doubting whether I exist or not? Not I, you. Thank you. Thank you. You should ask this question also, why there is always vote of thanks there. It's a good question, researcher questions. You should ask.
It was great honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. First and foremost, I thank our resource person, Dr. Chetan Singai, Associate Professor, School of Social Science, MS Ramaiah, University of Applied Science. I also express my heartfelt thanks to event coordinator, Dr. Anita MJ, Vice Principal, and HOD, PG department for organizing the workshop on research methodology on dissertation writing. Dissertation is to produce an original piece of research work on clearly defined topic. During this entire session, we have learned how to set agenda, how to select the topic, and the main part is literature review, where it was termed as Santorium, or it is an art of research work, and various search engines, and how to formulate the research topic, and how to formulate a research question, and various methods of data collection, and how to map the data. And I also express my heartfelt thanks to IQAC coordinator, Dr. Manoj Kumar V. Iremet. Next, my sincere thanks to all the teaching staff for their support and cooperation. Last but not least, I thank all the students for their active participation. Thank you, one and all.